The old highway stretched endlessly before them, a black ribbon winding through the desolate countryside.
Ashley, Emily and Jessica, three friends embarking on a new chapter of their lives, trudged onward, their laughter echoing faintly in the stillness.
The promise of a fresh start, of a charming old house nestled in the secluded countryside, kept them going.
As they walked, sharing stories and dreams, the shadows around them deepened.
Emily, ever the pragmatist, suggested they try hitchhiking.
Ashley, always the cautious one, hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to stay off the road.
But Jessica, ever the optimist, brushed off her concerns, her adventurous spirit undeterred. "Come on, Ash," she chirped, her voice echoing strangely in the darkness. "What could possibly happen? We're three strong, independent women. We can handle ourselves."
Her words were meant to be reassuring, but they rang hollow in the eerie silence of the night. They continued walking, their earlier light-heartedness replaced by a tense silence, each lost in their thoughts. Then in the distance, a pair of headlights appeared, growing steadily larger.
As the car approached, its headlights illuminating the road ahead, they saw him.
He was tall and lanky, his frame almost swallowed by a long, dark coat.
Hesitantly, Ashley raised her hand, her heart pounding in her chest. The car slowed to a stop beside them, its engine idling, a low rumble that seemed to reverberate through the night. The figure turned, and for the first time, they saw his face, illuminated by the car's interior light. He had a gaunt, almost skeletal face with deep-set eyes that seemed to bore into them. The man's smile, though unsettling a moment ago, shifted into something resembling warmth as Ashley stammered.
Hi there. Are you headed north by any chance?
He nodded, his eyes dark and intense, holding their gaze for a beat too long.
"Hop in," the man said, his voice surprisingly gentle, a stark contrast to his unsettling appearance.
Jessica, ever the fearless one, immediately moved towards the car, pulling open the backseat door.
Ashley hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to refuse, to grab her friends and run.
But Emily, ever practical, was already sliding into the front passenger seat, murmuring something about not looking a gift horse in the mouth.
With a resigned sigh, Ashley followed Jessica into the back seat. The man who introduced himself as Ray kept the conversation light.
"I've traveled far and wide, met all sorts of people. The open road, it's something else, isn't it?"
Yeah, it's amazing. We're really excited about our new house. Starting fresh, you know?
Emily, perhaps sensing the need to break the tension, responded to his stories, engaging him in conversation about their plans for the future. Ashley, however, found herself unable to speak. She shrank back in her seat, pulling her jacket tighter around herself.
"So, Ray, where's your favourite place you've visited?"
Ashley wished she could share Jessica's easy confidence, her ability to ignore the unsettling details. As they drove, the conversation took a turn.
"So, tell me about your families. What's life like back in the city?"
He asked about their families, their lives back in the city, his questions probing, intrusive.
"So, a new house, huh? You girls must be excited to start fresh, leave the past behind."
Ashley noticed he never mentioned where they were headed, only that it was north. He seemed to know more than he should.
Why do you say it like that?
She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ray chuckled, a low, humorless sound that sent a shiver down her spine.
"Just making conversation, sweetheart. Don't you like talking about the past?"
Something in Ray's tone, the way he emphasized the word past, sent a chill down Emily's spine.
Actually, we were just talking about how excited we are for the future. Right, girls?
Emily interjected, her voice firm despite the tremor running through her, throwing a desperate look at Ashley and Jessica.
"Yeah, totally. We can't wait."
Ashley, however, couldn't bring herself to speak. She just stared at Ray, her fear a tangible thing suffocating her.
"Of course. The future. The future is where all the possibilities lie. But the past has a way of catching up, doesn't it?"
His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken threat. Ashley's mind raced, fear gripping her like a vice. Ray's words, laced with veiled threats, confirmed her worst fears.
Don't worry, girls. We're almost there.
Outside the car, the scenery was a blur of dark trees and the occasional abandoned building, adding to the sense of isolation.
Where are you taking us?
Then, without warning, Ray veered off the main highway, the car bumping and swerving as it sped down a narrow dirt road.
A shortcut.
Ray chuckled, a low guttural sound that sent shivers down their spines. The dirt road seemed to stretch on forever, twisting and turning through dense dark woods.
Ray, we need to get to Pine Ridge Road. Are we even close?
She exchanged panicked glances with Emily, who sat frozen in her seat, her eyes wide with terror. Jessica, however, seemed oblivious to the palpable tension in the car. Ray didn't answer, his focus entirely on navigating the treacherous path. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken threat. Ashley felt a cold dread creep up her spine. They were lost, at the mercy of a man who was clearly unhinged. The car lurched to a stop, throwing them forward against their seats.
What's going on?
Jessica finally spoke, her voice small and uncertain. Ray didn't reply, but a slow, satisfied smile spread across his face.
We're here.
He finally said, his voice a low growl that seemed to vibrate through the car. The car had stopped in a small clearing, the trees pressing close on all sides like silent, watchful sentinels. Then she saw it. In the center of the clearing stood a dilapidated cabin, its wooden walls blackened with age and neglect. But it wasn't the cabin itself that sent a wave of nausea through Ashley. It was what hung from a makeshift wooden post beside the porch. A scream rose in Ashley's throat, but it died before it could escape her lips. Beside her, Emily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a sob. Even Jessica, lost in her strange trance only moments ago, seemed to snap back to reality.
Come on, ladies. Don't you want to see what's inside?
Ray, seemingly oblivious to their terror, stepped out of the car, his long coat billowing around him like a shroud.
We have to go.
Ashley felt a surge of adrenaline. They couldn't stay here. This was madness. They had to run, even if it meant running blindly into the darkness.
We have to go.
Emily, her face pale but resolute, nodded. She understood. They were trapped, but they weren't going down without a fight.
Jess, snap out of it. We have to go.
Ashley glanced at Jessica, who sat frozen in the back seat, her eyes fixated on the severed hand swaying gently in the breeze. Jessica blinked as if startled awake, her gaze finally shifting from the gruesome display to Ashley's face. Ashley took a deep breath, trying to ignore the tremor running through her body. They had a small window of opportunity, a chance to catch Ray off guard while he was distracted.
On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
As Ashley yelled, "3!" the three friends threw open the car doors and scrambled out, adrenaline surging through their veins. They didn't wait to see if Ray was following. Their only thought was to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the horrifying scene at the cabin. Ashley could hear Ray shouting something behind them, his voice a guttural roar that echoed through the trees, but she didn't dare to look back. The forest floor was uneven, littered with fallen branches and tangled undergrowth, but they pushed on, their lungs burning, their legs screaming in protest. The darkness was all-encompassing, the trees looming over them like menacing giants, their branches reaching out like skeletal arms, trying to snatch them back. Fear lent them speed, but it also stole their breath, turned their legs to lead. Ashley could hear her friends behind her, their gasps for air, a testament to their shared terror. They were running blind, guided only by instinct and the desperate hope of finding safety, a hope that dwindled with every passing second. The sounds of the forest seemed amplified in the darkness, the rustling of leaves, the snapping of twigs, the distant hoot of an owl. Each sound a potential threat, sending shivers down their spines. They ran until they could run no more, their bodies finally giving out from exhaustion and terror.
Emily? Jess?
Ashley collapsed onto the forest floor, her chest heaving, her vision blurring. She looked around, frantically searching for Emily and Jessica, her heart pounding in her chest. The trees seemed to press closer, suffocating her, the darkness closing in like a suffocating blanket.
Emily? Jess?
Ashley whispered, her voice hoarse, barely audible above the pounding of her own blood in her ears. There was no answer, only the rustling of leaves and the distant cry of a night bird. Panic welled up inside her, threatening to consume her. They had escaped the car, but they were far from safe. They were lost, alone, and hunted. Ashley struggled to her feet, her legs shaky, her head spinning. She had to find her friends. They had to stick together if they were going to survive this. She stumbled forward, pushing through the undergrowth, her hands outstretched, feeling her way through the darkness. Every shadow, every rustle of leaves sent a jolt of fear through her. But she pressed on, driven by a primal instinct to survive, to find her friends. The forest was a labyrinth, the trees seemingly shifting around her, disorienting her. Ashley stumbled over roots and fallen branches, her breath catching in her throat each time she thought she heard a noise, a footstep, a twig snapping under the weight of someone approaching. But each time it was just the wind, toying with her frayed nerves, mocking her fear. Then, through the darkness, she heard it, a faint cry, high-pitched and desperate. It was Jessica's voice calling her name. Relief washed over Ashley, followed immediately by a surge of terror. Jessica was out there, somewhere in the darkness, and she was in trouble. Ashley didn't hesitate. She pushed through the undergrowth, her heart pounding, her only thought to reach her friend. The cry came again, closer this time, laced with pain. Ashley broke into a run, her fear momentarily forgotten in the face of her friend's distress. She dodged trees, her breath ragged, her lungs burning, her eyes desperately searching for any sign of Jessica. As she ran, she realized the forest floor was no longer sloping downward. She was climbing, heading up a steep incline. Ashley burst into a small clearing, bathed in the eerie glow of the moon. In the centre stood Jessica, her back against a towering oak, her eyes wide with terror. Standing before her, his tall, lanky frame casting a long shadow in the moonlight, was Ray. He was holding a large hunting knife, its blade glinting menacingly in the moonlight, and a slow, cruel smile spread across his face as he saw Ashley.
Well, well, well. Look what we have here. The little bird finally flew into the spider's web.
Jessica whimpered, her gaze darting between Ashley and Ray, her body trembling.
Ashley, run!
She screamed, her voice raw with terror. Ashley froze, her mind racing. She couldn't leave Jessica, not like this. But what could she do? She was unarmed, outmatched, and completely out of her depth. Ray chuckled, a low, guttural sound that sent shivers down her spine.
Don't even think about it, sweetheart. There's nowhere left to run.
Desperation surged through Ashley. She had to do something, anything, to distract Ray, to give Jessica a chance to escape. Her eyes darted around the clearing, searching for a weapon, anything she could use to defend herself, to buy them some time.
And then she saw it, a large, jagged rock lying half-hidden in the undergrowth. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing.
Ashley lunged for the rock, scooping it up in her hands, her knuckles turning white as she gripped it tightly.
Get away from her!
She screamed, her voice hoarse but filled with a desperate courage. Ray turned towards her, his smile widening, his eyes gleaming with amusement.
You think that little rock is going to stop me?
He sneered. Before Ashley could react, a blood-curdling scream pierced the night. It wasn't Jessica's scream. It was Emily's. Ashley's blood ran cold. She had forgotten about Emily. Where had she come from? Ray turned his head towards the source of the sound, his attention momentarily diverted. It was the chance Jessica had been waiting for.
Seize the opportunity, Jessica. Ray's distracted. Now's your chance.
With surprising strength born of sheer terror, Jessica shoved him with all her might. The force of her push, amplified by Ray's momentary surprise, sent him stumbling backward. He tripped over a gnarled tree root, his balance already compromised by the steep incline of the clearing. His surprised yelp was cut short as he tumbled backward into the darkness. The only sound, his grunting breaths and the clatter of the hunting knife as it clattered across the hard-packed earth.
Run!
Jessica screamed, scrambling to her feet, her voice a desperate plea that echoed through the clearing.
She didn't need to be told twice. She threw the rock at the spot where Ray had disappeared, her heart pounding against her ribs like a war drum. She didn't wait to see if it connected. She didn't care. All that mattered was getting away from this place, away from the nightmare that had unfolded before her eyes.
They ran, her hand clasped tightly in Jessica's, their intertwined fingers a lifeline in the darkness. They didn't dare slow down, didn't dare look back, the image of Ray's cruel smile and the blood-chilling scream still ringing in their ears. The forest seemed to stretch on forever, the trees closing in around them, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers, trying to claw them back into the darkness. They burst out of the trees, the welcome sight of the dirt road greeting them like a beacon of hope. They didn't hesitate, didn't slow down. They ran along the rough track, their breath catching in their throats, their legs burning with exhaustion.
As they ran, I risked a glance over my shoulder. The forest was dark and silent, but I could sense Ray's presence behind us, a palpable evil that clung to us like a shadow. Then, through the darkness, came a sound that chilled me to the bone. It was Emily's voice, but it wasn't a scream anymore. It was a low, guttural moan filled with pain and something else, something that spoke of a terror so profound it defied description.
Ashley's blood ran cold. She knew with a sickening certainty that it was already too late for Emily.
We can't help her, she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. We have to keep running.
Ashley wanted to argue, to go back, to do something, anything to save their friend. But deep down, she knew Jessica was right. There was nothing they could do for Emily now. They had to save themselves. They ran until they couldn't run anymore, their bodies finally giving out, their lungs burning, their legs screaming for respite. They collapsed on the side of the dirt road, their chests heaving, their bodies racked with sobs. They huddled together, drawing strength from each other's presence. The terrifying events of the night seared into their memories.
The sound of an engine in the distance made us both flinch, our bodies tense with fear. A pair of headlights pierced the darkness, growing steadily closer. Jessica and I scrambled to our feet, our eyes wide with terror. Was it him? Had he come back for us?
The approaching vehicle slowed as it neared them, its headlights illuminating their ragged figures. It wasn't Ray. It was an old pickup truck, driven by an elderly woman, her face etched with concern as she took in their disheveled appearances. They told her they had been attacked, that their friend was still out there somewhere. She didn't question their story, didn't hesitate to help. She bundled them into her truck and drove them to the nearest town, her silence a comforting presence in the aftermath of the terror they had endured. The police never found Ray. Emily's body was discovered a week later, deep in the woods, not far from the dilapidated cabin. The details of her death were too gruesome to repeat, the brutality of it sending shockwaves through the small community. Ashley and Jessica tried to move on, to rebuild their lives, but the scars of that night ran deep. They were haunted by nightmares, by the memory of Emily's screams, by the chilling knowledge that true evil lurked in the shadows of the world waiting to claim its next victim. They never spoke of that night again, not to each other, not to anyone. But the fear lingered, a constant companion, whispering on the wind, reminding them that some wounds never truly heal, and some nightmares never end. The open road, once a symbol of freedom and adventure, now held a sinister edge, a constant reminder of the darkness that lay hidden beneath the surface of the world, waiting to claim its next victim. The hitchhiker they knew was still out there, a phantom haunting their memories. a chilling reminder that even in the safety of daylight, some shadows never truly fade. They had escaped with their lives, but they would forever be bound to the events of that night, their spirits forever marked by the encounter on the dark highway.